Two cats walk into a bar. One of the cats goes straight up to the bar counter and says, "Hello, a pint of your finest Guinness, please." And the man behind the bar says, "Certainly, sir, a pint of my finest Guinness coming right up." And the cat says, "It's a trick question. There's no such thing as finest Guinness. You're supposed to make them all exactly the same. Exactly the same. I want no difference between them whatsoever. I want it to look exactly the same, just as every black and white cat looks exactly the same. They're all based around Pope Benedict's two black and white cats, who both look like our much missed Jody." And the barman says, "Wait, who's Jody?" And the cat says, "Jody was our much missed cat, Jody, black and white cat. She died a few weeks ago. We'd had her for something like 16 years. And the barman says, "Wait, you had a cat? You're a cat?" And the cat says, "Yes, is that a problem? Our cat's not allowed to have cats. Humans are allowed to have cats, but cats aren't. What's that about? Was this some kind of control thing? The most natural place for a cat to be is with other cats. If I was a cat, I'd much rather be owned by my parents than by some human who just wants to be as an accessory to carry around in their shirt pocket. No, thank you very much." And the barman says, "No, I think you misunderstand me." And the cat says, "I don't misunderstand you at all. I understood every single word you said. I understood every word. If you think I didn't understand you, please name 3 words that I didn't understand. Because I certainly didn't hear anti-disestablishmentarianism in among that. If that had been one of the words, then you'd be writing saying I misunderstood it. Well, wait, or would you? Because I know what that word means. Are you saying I misunderstood it? If I said it, which I didn't. Well, if I said anti-disestablishmentarianism as part of my speech just now, would you have claimed that I misunderstand that word?" And the barman says, "That would depend, obviously, on how you use it. How you use a word is a prime indicator of whether or not you understand that word." And the cat says, "I suppose that's true. I suppose that's true. And are you very anti-disestablishmentarianism-y yourself?" And the barman says, "I don't think that's any of your business, sir. I'll keep my religious beliefs to myself, if you don't mind." The cat says, "I wasn't asking you about your religious beliefs. I was asking you, are you anti-disestablishmentarianism-y? Oh, sorry, is it anti-disestablishmentarianism-y?" And the man behind the bar says, "Sir, that word refers to something to do with some church. I think so anyway. Wasn't it something to do with the Church of England or the Protestant Church in England as being against the disestablishment of it or something?" And the cat says, "Oh, that's what you think it means, do you? Oh. Well, I'll tell you something. It means something very, 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 very different where I come from." And the man behind the bar says, "Oh, stop. Right. What does it mean?" And the cat says, "Where I come from, it's just a sound that humans make. A longer sound than usual, but it's just a sound. It's basically just a grunt that they make. We hear them sometimes. They go, anti-disestablishmentarianism. And all we hear is the teacher on the Charlie Brown Snoopy show. They never show the teacher, and she just goes, whoop, 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 whoop." And that's what it sounds like to us cats when you use the word anti-disestablishmentarianism. And the man behind the bar says, "Well, then how do you know I was even asking you about that word, or mentioning it, or saying it?" And the cat says, "Because I brought it up. So I said it my way. I didn't say it the human way. I said anti-disestablishmentarianism, but I said that using my throat, which doesn't have vocal cords. My throat is only set up to make meowing sounds, but I've managed to master a way to form words using it by having contortions of my throat. I'm forming my meows into words, and I'm able to say anti-disestablishmentarianism. I would argue that I'm saying it even more impressively than a human would say it, were a human to say it. I don't think any human has used that word in at least 30 years. But nonetheless," and the man behind the bar says, "Nonetheless what?" And the cat says, "Nonetheless wiser." The barman says, "I think you'll find the word is none the wiser." And the cat says, "No, I'm saying nonetheless wiser. It's a different thing." I'm not saying none the wiser, I'm saying none the less wiser. Meaning in the 60 seconds during which I've been talking, I haven't lost a single brain cell despite all the passive smoking I'm having to do in here in your bar and the beverage that you're making me drink, or the beverage that you're enabling me to drink, this Guinness. What's in this? Is it black currant or something? Is it black coffee? If it is, it's not very effective. I'm half asleep. Is it decaffeinated? And the barman says, well, it's certainly no caffeine in it. I can't say it's decaffeinated because I don't think it was ever caffeinated. You can't call it decaffeinated unless it was originally caffeinated and it went through a process to remove the caffeine or leave the caffeine in but remove its power. When you decaffeinate something, does the caffeine remain but it's just empty? I don't know. Or do they remove the caffeine completely? Are there dead caffeine cells in your beverage that's been decaffeinated? I don't know. Brain cells die out. The cells are still there. They're just dead cell corpses floating around, I presume. Presumably they bleed out somewhere or they disappear somewhere or they disintegrate. Or maybe they don't. Maybe I'm wrong to presume that. Well, I suppose there's that. Anyway, on with the show. Into your head, into your head, into your head, into your head, into your head. There's going to be some talk on the program today about touch typing with your feet. Now, I say touch typing. There's probably some Apple keyboard you can get where you don't touch it. You just have your fingers hover over the keys. And that's probably even more difficult than regular touch typing. If you want to do that without looking down at the keyboard, that's going to be very difficult. So I'm sure they found some way to profit from that. The Apple would have brought in this keyboard. Now I can touch type, but I can't use an Apple keyboard because they're fucking tiny. It's like Apple decided we don't want to be taking up too much space on this world. We're like some animal that's scared of everything, so it curls itself up into as tiny a ball as possible. So there's less attack face for our predators. We'll make the keyboard as tiny as possible. I can't use laptops, but the way people talk about it, from what I understand, the Apple laptop, it's like carrying around a piece of paper that you stole from the photocopier at work because you wanted to write down something that you heard at work and you fold it up and put it in your pocket. That's a laptop. And every couple of years they bring out a new one that's smaller and you go and get it. And of course that has a built-in keyboard. When the people are designing these things, they base them on things that they see around them in nature. So it's quite possible some designer in Apple thought, oh, we'll design this little keyboard. What will we base the size on? Base it around the size of the human mouth. One of the bigger mouths, maybe. So you might have quite a big mouth, but it'll be a letterbox-shaped mouth. It'll have the bare minimum, no number pad. It'll just have 2 rows of teeth. I got my first Apple Mac about 2 years ago when I brought back this podcast. I got a very old Mac Mini and I put all this shit on it and I do my shit on it now. I don't mean, of course I don't. You know full well I don't mean that. I was trying to find something vulgar or interesting to say. Well, no, obviously I don't shit on it. I don't do my shit on it. No. I make this podcast on a Mac Mini and it's got a normal keyboard plugged into it because I'm normal. It's got a massive monitor plugged into it because I'm not normal in that respect. I would not dream of using an Apple keyboard because if I did, the keyboard that was in my dream would be massive and then I'd see the real keyboard at my desk in the morning. And anyway, the point is, they're designing these things. They're thinking I'm going to base it around the human mouth or maybe the human foot or some other thing that's more or less oblong and flat. I don't know what they were thinking of when they designed these keyboards, but they're shit. And if you're able to use them That's because you've been brought up in a walled garden where the only thing you have access to is these things, and they're shit. They're shit. You've been brought up in a room full of shit, and you know nothing other than this shit. It's like that philosophy thing. There's a philosophy thing people like to say when they're thinking about philosophical matters, the nature of the universe, and the nature of consciousness. They talk about the idea of some kids sitting in the cave for their whole lives, facing a wall. They never see daylight or go outside, and the only thing they see is shadows dancing on the cave wall, which are caused by the light behind them. They never turn around. All they see of life is these 2D reflections. They think the world is a 2D shadow or something. That's the philosophy thing. I know I haven't got it exactly right, but it's something like that. If you grow up in a cave and you only ever see 2D stuff, you think the world is 2D. In a 3D world, we don't see the 4D, so we're not seeing everything that exists, or something like that. Well, if you grow up in a world where you only have shit, and shit in this analogy means Apple keyboards that are tiny, they're made to look nice, but they're unusable. There's more to the life than looking nice. And at least with shit, when people make shit, they know the shit doesn't have to look nice. It serves a function. It's not there to look nice. If Apple designed a toilet brush, it would be brilliant white, fit into a brilliant white or see-through cup. Everyone knows when you're getting the toilet brush, you're not supposed to say this, but you want the bristles on that brush and the handle and the cup that it fills into, that you fill with bleach, to be dark brown. You get a dark brown toilet brush that fits into a dark brown cup-shaped toilet brush holder with a lid that's built into the handle of the brush. You want the bristles on the brush to be brown as well. Do you want the bleach that you put in that cup that you soak the brush in? Do you want the bleach to be brown? Oh no, that's it. I have to think about that. Next time I'm getting a new toilet brush for this ensuite, if we're having visitors in here, I have to think about that. Because you put bleach into these things to soak your toilet brush in. But the bleach is already brown. The clean bleach that you put in is already brown. That might be useful. Or will it? Because they'll think, oh, what are they hiding? What's he hiding in there? But if you put white in it to say, oh, what's he got the white bleach on that? That's hiding something. I have to think about that. I can't think about it while I'm doing this, but mental note to myself, think about whether you want white bleach or brown bleach. Now, maybe you don't want to buy brown bleach. You want to, because you can prepare brown bleach just by using it for a while for that purpose, and then it'll turn brown. You don't want them thinking, oh, look, they've got old bleach in here. Jesus Christ. No. So I don't know what you do there. You don't want them thinking, oh, he's got nice, fresh white bleach in here, and the brush is white. So does that mean the brush was filthy and it's being soaked, painted in this white bleach? And they think, oh, Christ, that means that's an old, filthy brush. That's the problem. I think the only solution is to have a brand new toilet brush that you put out for visitors that's never used. You don't provide one of those cups that hides everything away. Put it on a saucer, and then they'll be afraid to use it. They think, oh, this is immaculate. They must be very clean people. Very, very, very clean. Which is a bit weird because one of them is going blind. Are we supposed to believe he gets through his whole life without ever stealing a toilet brush? He's able to put it on a little saucer here and not make a mess. That's not credible either. So no, I have to think about this toilet brush very, very seriously. I made another faux pas last week. I cleaned out the toilet brush in the ensuite here. I forgot you're supposed to use watered down weak bleach for some things. I must have splashed some bleach on my t-shirt or something. 10 minutes later, I'm sitting in the sitting room and I break into uncontrollable coughing, which didn't go away until I had a long hot shower and changed my clothing. I nearly poisoned the whole town. So that's the problem if you take hygiene too seriously as well. You don't want to be doing that. You just want to give the impression that you take hygiene very seriously, I suppose. Probably means you shouldn't discuss it on your podcast then as well. Oh, Jesus Christ, I can't do anything right. I know what you're thinking there. You're thinking, did he just do a big long thing warning about upcoming talk about touch typing with your feet and diverge into a thing about bleach and toilets and stains and very disgusting things, then put that out as his pre-show warning about the foot thing? I suppose you have a point there. The warning shouldn't be even more disgusting than the thing it's warning about. So I suppose there's that. I don't happen to think that normal bodily functions are disgusting. So what I was talking about there was normal bodily functions and the domestic issues involved in handling these functions and maintaining cleanliness. But typing with your toes is not a natural bodily function. It is not. Toes are not designed to type. Your fingers aren't even designed to type. Or at least they evolved to grip things and do things that are appropriate to typing. There is that, but no, touch typing is not a natural bodily function, whether it's with your feet or your fingers. Now, I'm going to be touch typing as I'm creating this program. I'm not touch typing now. I don't do any typing in here. When I record a segment here, I use the on-screen keyboard to try and type a label into it. And it usually comes out as blurg ZZZ7 blurgy cat. It's only a note that needs to be understood by myself, so it's fine. In the normal course of post-production, I sit gazing at my screen and my fingers are there gazing at the keyboard and my fingers are there typing. And you consider that a natural, normal bodily function, do you? You consider that more normal and more acceptable than excreting waste that if you didn't excrete could poison you to death. I'm talking about hygienically disposing of that down the toilet and handling bleach properly. You consider that more offensive and less natural than sitting here staring at this screen that's probably blinding me further afterwards. Spends their days staring into this screen. Probably you included. You have the nerve to take offense at something not being a normal bodily function, or something being a normal bodily function, whatever it is I claimed you were taking offense at. What did I say? Oh, yes, I was saying. No, it wasn't that. I've misstated that. I was claiming that you're taking offense at me talking about normal bodily functions, as I was with the stuff about the bleach and the hygiene involved in normal bodily functions, while at the same time I'm claiming that you're implying that me talking about typing is more natural and normal than that. That typing is a normal, natural bodily function. Well, exactly, that's my point exactly. You're typing, you're doing more than one unnatural function. You're staring at this screen that's probably destroying your brain cell by cell. While you have your fingers down on this keyboard, you're twisting your fingers into all sorts of contortions that you don't even have to think about. You've taught your fingers to destroy themselves automatically. You've taught your fingers to do the walking, like that old advert on television here in the 80s and 90s. The golden pages, Irish equivalent to the yellow pages, were separate from the main phone directory and it had all the businesses in it. You would take out your golden pages or your yellow pages and you'd use that to look up a plumber. The first thing you'd see in the plumbers was that all of the plumbers had all chosen to name themselves AA1 Aardvark Plumbing. The top of the page, whatever way this was laid out, it was laid out like a telephone directory, but it was divided into, I think they were categorized. So you look up P for plumbing, and when you looked up P for plumbing, unlike the phone book where everyone's surname decided where you ended up on the page, you had very little control over that unless you married someone whose surname was Aardvark. And why would that help you? I don't know. Their first name would have to be Aardvark in that case. For one thing, you're expecting people to be looking up people with your surname and use Aardvark as your first name because you want to be the first person they find when they're looking for people with that same surname as you in your general area. I want to be the top of that page. When they look up my surname, I want them to see my name first, so my name will be Aardvark. Or I'll marry someone called Aardvark and take on their surname, and then I don't know what you're thinking there. But the point with the golden pages and the yellow pages was you go to the plumber section under P's And the first plumber you'd see in your area would be the one whose name was AA1 Aardvark Plumbing. Those people, there was no one in that family called Aardvark. Their business had nothing to do with aardvarks. I don't think we even have aardvarks in this country. In fact, do aardvarks even exist? Or is that just that cartoon? There was a cartoon in the middle of the Roadrunner Coyote show. They had a cartoon in the middle about an aardvark. Sometimes he was called an anteater. And his voice was modelled on one of those comedians. It was either the fellow who went, I can't get no respect, or the other fella, Jackie something. It wasn't him. They got a voice actor to imitate him for some reason, and they gave that voice to the aardvark. I remember watching that program. I had no idea about any of this, about it being based on the comedian or anything. I presume they thought, oh, this will impress the adults who end up watching the Roadrunner show. We'll put on this aardvark thing in the middle. We won't tell the kids that it's based on this, but we'll have the aardvark for some reason speaking the voice of this obscure comedian. I know he's not obscure in America, but he's obscure to the rest of the world. We don't go around looking for comedians who speak in that voice that he had and going, I can't get her no respect. No. Now, you put that in the TV listings, I suppose. It would make sense to call that the Aardvark show or something. Except it wasn't called that. It was a cartoon that was in the middle of the Roadrunner and Coyote show. The Aardvark wouldn't help with that at all. The Roadrunner show, I think it was called. And you add the Roadrunner show, that's even worse. At least if you call it Roadrunner show, it'll be further up in the listings than the Roadrunner show. Except the listings aren't even in alphabetical order, so that doesn't help you there. They make it even worse for themselves. They make it even more difficult to get noticed. The opening sequence of that show is a live action thing. Some fella in a race car driving on a racetrack or something. Are the kids supposed to say, oh, this is an analogy? We're showing this fella driving around in a racing car. Oh wait, was that the Pink Panther show? Am I confusing the Pink Panther show and oh yes. Did I say the Roadrunner show first, or did I say the Pink Panther show? I probably said Roadrunner. And now that I think about it, the Aardvark fella is probably in the middle of the Pink Panther show. I think it was called the New Pink Panther show, perhaps. Doesn't really matter now, anyway. Remade it. Destroyed it. I saw for the first time the other day a clip from the new show that came out about 20 years ago featuring Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck in an apartment as a sitcom with no antics. They're living in an apartment and they're talking to each other on the phone and doing normal sitcom stuff, except in a cartoon. They destroyed that. It's ridiculous. You also have Jellystone. It's a town near Jellystone Park, which is where Yogi Bear was set. They have Yogi and they have all the other Hanna-Barbera bears and dogs and hounds from the various cartoons I used to watch as a child. So if they put them in this town where they all live, they've done something to all of the characters as well. Yogi Bear and all of them. They've squashed up their bodies so they're very short. Like they're trying to make them look like South Park characters. I don't know. I'm supposed to believe all these dogs and hounds and bears who used to live out in the wild have all moved into some town. You're corrupting our children with this shit. As bad as what you're trying to do to Sesame Street. Sesame Street, I understand now, the Netflix version is now down to 12-minute episodes. And if you're a young person, you think, what's the normal length for a Sesame Street episode? That sounds about right. Sesame Street for many years was an hour long, including commercials, which weren't really commercials. There were strings of little featurettes between the street stuff. No. You've no attention span. You probably didn't even make it to the end of this sentence yet. Or at all. And you're proud of it too. They closed down MTV Music recently. They said, we're not going to do the music thing anymore. We'll get rid of all these music channels. They're just costing us money. We don't like when things cost us money. It's over-commercializing our sector, having things that cost money. Are you going into your head? I mentioned anti-disestablishmentarianism earlier in the program. I don't mention it directly. I mention it through a cat who's in a two cats walk into a bar story. But I bring up anti-disestablishmentarianism nonetheless. Now, anti-disestablishmentarianism is something I've had a bit of a history with this word. As a young, impressionable teenager, let's see, was he my, oh yes, I think he was next door's English teacher. Our English teacher was off for the day, so we were sent in next door. And next door's English teacher had a reputation of supposedly one of the finest proponents of the English language in the country. He'd written books. His name was known around academic circles as being one of the finest teachers of English to 12-year-old kids. He says, we're going to have a little quiz here. What's the longest word you can come up with that exists? So I wrote anti-disestablishmentarianism. And he told me that's not a real word, that it doesn't count, it's not real, it's not a word. And then he asked me what it means. Now, I wasn't entirely sure what it meant at the time because I was a child and the only English teacher who I had access to and who supposedly was one of the finest, was denying the existence of this word, so I wasn't sure where to go with that, but I provided my own little definition as best I could. I said, I think it means against the disestablishment of the church, which was somewhat right. It was something to do with church organisation being disestablished or something to do with separation of church and state or something like that. I've never found out entirely exactly what it means, because I was told by this teacher at 14 years of age that this one word that I was proud of knowing did not exist. It was invalid. I'm glad he didn't say invalid. I'm not sure he even said invalid, but in my mind he may as well have, because I was invalidated at an early age. Longest word I'd ever come up with and tried to impress this man, and he decided, no, I'm going to invalidate this child. I know he probably didn't mean to invalidate me, but he effectively did. He invalidated me by saying, no, that word you've come up with, that's not a word. Didn't really even explain about it. He just said, no, fuck that shit. That's what he said. He said, fuck this shit. Again, those weren't his exact words, but when you say something to a child like that, the exact words you use don't really matter because the child comes up with new words for that about 35 years later on his podcast. And podcasting wasn't even invented in those days, so he had no way of knowing. So just remember, when you're talking to a child, you've no idea what's going to be invented 35 years from now, when he has the means to use that invention to seek out revenge on you. I'm not seeking out revenge on that man. He's a perfectly decent man, I'm sure. He may well be dead by now. If he's not, he's quite old. May well be in a nursing home, going round going, oh, anti-disestablishmentarianism. I killed off that word, I can tell you. I'm pretty sure that was a real word until he came along. I've seen it written about. If you go on and Google anti-disestablishmentarianism now, you will come across it being used by reasonably respectable people. Many of them from Britain, the home of the English language. You would think they would know. I don't think he was English. No, he was Irish. Irish people take pride in not being English, so why he would know with such certainty that anti-disestablishmentarianism is or isn't a word, I'm not sure. I suppose because he's an English teacher and it's his job. There is that. Probably had a degree in English. That's what these people do. They go and get a degree in English. They get a thing endorsing them, saying, oh, you're endorsed now. Your version of English is the correct English. Because we don't like to say things like the Queen's English over here for various obvious reasons. We don't talk about the Queen's English. So you have to say, your language isn't endorsed by the Queen, it's endorsed by this university. Here's your degree. It's endorsed by Trinity College University. Now, of course, if you look up Trinity College, you'll find there's about 8 different Trinity colleges in the world, and half of them are in England. I know there's a Trinity College in Dublin. It's a very fancy place. Right in the middle of Dublin, you had this huge city block that's been there since the dawn of time. Surrounded. You go into Dublin City now, they say, oh, look, all these roads lead right into the city centre, but for some reason, there's this area you can't get in anywhere, surrounded by buildings, like a big, it's like it was a big You know the way sometimes, oh, you probably don't. Why would you? You never will, because I can't figure out how to express it. How do I do it? I suppose it's like, uh, the universe. There's a theory about the shape of the universe. People say maybe it's a 4D sphere. Now, nobody really knows what a 4D sphere is. You know what a circle is. You know what a two-dimensional circle is. And you know what a three-dimensional sphere is. That's a three-dimensional version of a circle. It's got a third dimension, and all of our planets are three-dimensional. So they say maybe the universe is a four-dimensional version of a sphere. It's got an extra dimension. We don't know what that dimension is. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's something else that we don't know. Maybe it's a four-dimensional sphere. Now, this ancient university in the middle of Dublin City has been there for hundreds of years. When you approach its location in Dublin, the first thing you notice is that there's this wall, there's these railings and walls. There are gates at various places along this wall. There's a whole part of the city that's kind of cut off unless you have business in there. And they let tourists in and they go and look at the Book of Kells or whatever's in there in some museum. Or you go in there, you walk around, you say, oh, this is great. This is great. I can see how everyone comes out of here with degrees. There's all these benches, there's all these nice places where you can sit around. You can sit around reading, basically. They have a very fancy ancient library. I've never been in there at all, I don't think, ever. I've no business going in there. No business going in there. I did used to get a bus from just outside of that college's main entrance going up to my college, where, funnily enough, I was studying for a degree that would come from the UK. It wasn't a degree in English, though, and I dropped out after a few years, but that's not really relevant. The back end of that long city block, they built all these new buildings just at the arse end of the campus, where the students can get off the train. They don't even have to cross the road to get to the college anymore, because they go up the stairs into some little building they've bought across the road, and then they go over a covered footbridge, like it's a mall or something. They go over this. I go there sometimes now. I cross that road, have my little white stick. I'm hoping the cyclists don't run me over. I'm hoping the stampeding pedestrians who are particularly present in that street in the morning rush hour going from the train station upwards wherever they work, I'm hoping they don't stampede me. Patiently waiting for the green light and the beeping signal. You see these students, they were going to some building beside the train station over this covered glass bridge. It's basically an indoor bridge. They connected the building to another building at the back of the campus. It's like on historical dramas or cartoons, the ancient king and queen being carried on a thing that's like a stretcher. It's got poles on it. It's like a stretcher, but it's got a little covered carriage on it. It's like if you were picked up by ambulance and they put you on a stretcher, but then you said, no, this stretcher needs to have a little compartment on it that I can sit in. Can't be just lying directly on this stretcher. No. The king or queen sit in a little box on this, and you have at least 4 people carrying this thing using the poles that it's attached to. How they don't break, I don't know. It's not going to be extra strong just because you have several servants carrying it. No. What are they called? They're not called stretchers, obviously. A horse and cart, except they pretend horses haven't been invented yet, and they pretend wheels haven't been invented yet. You just have 4 of your servants carrying you on this thing. And for some reason, you'd prefer that to being towed behind a horse and cart. At least the British royals. They allowed themselves to be towed on wheels instead of just carried. At least they have the decency to allow wheels to be put underneath them, which help substantially whoever has to carry them or tow them or put them behind a horse or put them in a taxi or whatever. They allow wheels to be used. Can you imagine if the British royals have said, yes, we want to travel everywhere in this little box and wave out at people, but the box isn't allowed to have wheels because that's beneath us, and we want the wheels not to be beneath us. Even the Pope goes round sometimes in this glass box, and even him, he doesn't ask for the wheels to be removed. No, because he knows if we're going to be served and carted around everywhere, the least we could do will be allow wheels. It makes everything easier. We do make our emergency service personnel carry people on stretchers, but that's if they're not able to walk, and they're not very well when they're doing it. Those are patients, basically. They've been shot in the head, or they've collapsed with a sore tummy, or they've had some injury, their leg has fallen off, and they've called the emergency services. And the emergency services are all ready for that. They have wheels on their ambulance, of course, so they're only going to be carrying you until you reach the ambulance. From wherever you are to the ambulance, and then you just put you in there. Now, a lot of the time, even then, they have things they carry you on. There are things on wheels. They have a kind of scissors design on these trolleys. They load you up onto the... When I was a child, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but then I'm not. Because I'm a child who knew about anti-disestablishmentarianism, so I think it's fairly obvious that I wasn't a complete moron. I had a fear of ambulances as a child, whereby I always thought, I think I must have seen either a Johnson, Mooney and O'Brien bread truck or a Brennan's bread truck. They have these little trucks that go around to all the shops around Dublin every morning. Little bread trucks. You open up the back of them, you can't climb into it. It's all shelves, just shelves high enough for a pan of bread. And there's 7 or 8 shelves, as far as you can see. When you glance in the door of the back of this truck, anyway. I've no business going into it. I've never been inside one of these bread trucks. But looking from the back, it appears there's shelves that take up the whole space. And as a child, I thought that was what ambulances were like. I thought they bring you out on this stretcher and then they slide you into one of these shelves and you have about 3 inches of space above you and then there's another shelf above you and you slide you in like that. I was horrified to learn this. Obviously, I didn't learn it. I mislearned it. I probably assumed that ambulances were like that because of the bread trucks, which probably aren't like that at all either. I probably misunderstood those as well. But those don't alarm me quite as much because I'm not a loaf of bread. If I was a loaf of bread, I'd be alarmed because, for one thing, I'm going to expire by the best before date, which is probably less than a week away. So that would be alarming. If I was going in an ambulance, the way I imagined as a child, I would find that terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Let's thank our lucky stars that that's not how ambulances work. Once upon a time, there was a dog. 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 Basically a dog. And this dog, he was sitting in his bed one day, minding his own business, watching television, waiting for his maid to come in and serve him breakfast on one of those trays that has a little trolley thing on it, a hospital-style trolley that has wheels that go under the bed. He was waiting for the maid to come in with that. And when she finally did come in with that, with the dog's breakfast on it, the dog realised, oh bollocks, that's not compatible with my dog bed. My dog bed is a soft bed that sits directly on the floor, and I sit directly on the dog bed, or I lie on it, or whatever you call this. Half the time I'm neither sitting nor lying, I'm just kind of flopped on this dog bed, rearranging my body every couple of minutes. Most dogs, you watch them try to relax, they don't relax at all. Dogs are incapable of relaxing. If anyone ever needed to make use of an over-the-counter sleep aid, it's dogs. You go into the vet's, well, there is a counter there. It's the receptionist counter. And sometimes that doubles as a checkout for the little shop that they have in the veterinary office. That's not the equivalent of getting stuff over the counter in Boots or somewhere where you go in and say, hello, can I have a pack of Panadol Night, please? No, your dog certainly can't do it unless he's a very unique dog who can talk which in this case he is, but that's in another universe where dogs can talk. We all know none of this is happening in the real world. Dogs aren't going around talking. We have an unspoken agreement with the dogs that when you have all this fictional stuff about dogs, nearly every entertainment program aimed at children has talking dogs in it, or talking animals of some kind, or humanoid dogs. Usually when there's talking dogs, they're humanoid, standing upright. And we accept that. We accept every cartoon since the 1960s has had talking upright humanoid dogs in it. Sometimes they'll have a very educational cartoon that has normal, non-humanoid shaped dogs who talk. And that's when it gets a bit weird. The Animals of Farthing Wood, I think, might be an example of that. You have these dogs, wherever kind of dogs live in the wood, maybe they're wolves or something, but they're walking around on all fours, yet they're able to talk like a humanoid dog. And that's the least realistic portrayal of a talking dog that you could possibly have. And it's also I find that disturbing to look at and listen to. When I see a dog going around on all fours but it can talk, that's disturbing. I think it's possibly because in that cartoon, which I've never watched but I've seen clips of it, there's a lot of this stuff where the animals are rising up against human destruction of their forest or something, if I remember rightly. I think that's what happens in the Animals of Farthing Wood. It shows them walking around on all fours, talking to each other like Planet of the Apes on all fours with dogs and tigers and owls and things. So no, I don't like that. I don't think that's suitable for children. It's far more friendly if the talking dogs are upright, humanoid. Maybe they wear a hat or something. Maybe they go around stealing picnic baskets. That's a lot more wholesome, I think, than some disturbing dog who's going around and able to talk. Can you imagine if the wolves around where you live were able to talk? That would be terrifying. Invariably, they'd be given some English accent because that's what the one villain that they have in movies is always given an English accent. They usually have white hair. They usually go around waiting for Bruce Willis to shoot them in the face, which he takes his time doing. He gets around to it after 2 to 2.5 hours. These action films, they go on forever. So imagine if that was a dog. We all love the action movies of Bruce Willis, but can you imagine if the villain in that is a talking dog? White hair or no white hair, that would be no. Now imagine it was a talking dog who's not upright, who's on 4 legs. And now imagine it's not even a cartoon, or it is a cartoon. I suppose if they reboot the Die Hard movies, perhaps they'll have live action combined with animation. They'll get your man who did Titanic and Avatar and all that, he'll come along and he'll create these new villains. Once you're creating the villain out of nothing but ones and zeros, they can be anything. You can have a dog with an English accent and white hair walking around on all fours. They could even have a different number of legs. It could be a 3-legged dog or a 5-legged dog. You can't do that if it's a humanoid dog. It has to have 2 legs or 1 leg. Actually, that's not entirely true. A humanoid, upright, talking dog can have any number of legs as long as there's not more than 2. Just as a human can have any number of legs as long as there's not more than 2. I suppose you can be born with a 3rd leg. Technically a deformity, because you're not supposed to be born with a 3rd leg. And when I say 3rd leg, that's not a reference to something vulgar. Some people are born with what we call deformities. But I suppose there's a small number of people who might have a 3rd leg. And then you have people who were born co-joined twins. I suppose you could have a villain who's co-joined twins. Make it interesting. Co-joined twin, non-humanoid talking dogs. Maybe it's got 3 front legs and 3 hind legs. Not counting the vulgar thing, which we don't, because we're not juveniles here. That would make 7 legs in total. That would be very confusing for any children watching. No, so we keep 6 legs. It's a 6-legged, going around on all 6s, non-humanoid talking dog who's a villain in this thing. So this would be in a future James Cameron designed Die Hard reboot, which sadly would be unlikely to star Bruce Willis, who I think is retired now due to illness. They have to recast him. Now, James Cameron, of course, would want to recast him as some sort of robotic thing. He'd say, oh, we'll make a new version of wherever that character Bruce Willis used to play was. What was he anyway? I think he was a human. You could recast him. He's come back, but he's a baddie now. That's what he'd probably do, because that's what he did with Terminator. No, he did the opposite with Terminator. Hey, was that a James Cameron film? I think it was. The original Terminator. Arnold Schwarzenegger, former governor of somewhere in America that we don't really take much interest in. Arnold Schwarzenegger played a cyborg who had come from the future to protect some woman or her son, or protect the son by protecting his mother, whatever they did. They had a lot more money for the sequel, so they said, we can't have the Terminator come back. I think he was dead or something, or destroyed. We'll have that cyborg thing played again by Arnold Schwarzenegger, but we make him a good guy. He's not a baddie anymore. He's a good guy. There's some huge war going on in the future, and these people, instead of partaking in the war, they're just sitting around making robots. They're creating robot versions of Arnold Schwarzenegger over and over again. Every movie, they make a version of Arnold Schwarzenegger. They say, this one will be a goodie, this one will be a baddie. We'll keep sending them back until everything's right. And they do this for about 6 movies. Now, I can only assume that in the future there's already been one of these movies made based on real events, whatever goes on in the future that cause these cyborg wars. Someone decided to make a movie based on that. And as a result of the movie, toy companies made a toy version of the Arnold Schwarzenegger character in the movie that they make in the future. They said, let's make this toy a robot so the kids will all start getting robots for Christmas. And that's how we'll take over the world. Oh, this is nonsense. Stop this. I wish I hadn't gone into this Terminator stuff at all. It's not going very well. You're probably thinking, no, it's fine. It's going absolutely fine. It sounds great so far. Please continue. I did continue. You didn't get to hear the part where I continued because it's below par programming.
Into your head.
Now, next door's English teacher, I mentioned that I was glad he said invalid and not invalid. If we were in that classroom now, we could just record it and sort this out pretty swiftly. It's not going to be possible to do that until time travel is invented. The only way we have of looking at what he said is to look at the transcript of my telling of this story. A lot of the podcast apps now produce automatic transcripts. But when you look at it, you're going to see me saying that he said invalid. And there's a couple of problems with that. First of all, I don't think he said invalid at all. That was just a flourish I added. I suppose it's possible that he might have said it wasn't a valid word. And that's not offensive in any way. Where was I going? Oh, yes. Presume for a moment that he did say invalid. I claimed here in my telling of this story that I'm glad he said invalid and not invalid. Well, if he had said either of those, how would I know what syllable he put inflection on when he was saying invalid or invalid? And that's how you'd know. But even that would be a problem because this is an international program. You Americans say things with different inflections than we do here. Might be people listening to this who think of the word invalid, and when they're using it to say invalid, they pronounce it invalid. And when they're using it to say invalid, they say invalid. Because you Americans, you'll do weird things. You say the word Bernard, but you put the inflection on the nard instead of the burr. You don't want to say Bernard, you say Bernard, which is just plain incorrect. And that's been endorsed by situation comedy. The classic British situation comedy Yes Minister had a character called Bernard, and they sure as hell don't call him Bernard in that. And that's from England where they invented English. It's got posh English stage actors in it. It's got Nigel, what's his name? He was in an American movie, Nigel Hawthorne. Before he died, the one where he keeps going, John, something, you've been fined, something, some futuristic thing, and he's the voice of the automatic police. It's not RoboCop, is it? I don't think so, because I don't think I've seen RoboCop. His one big splash into Hollywood, I presume that's his one big splash into Hollywood anyway. I don't know if he was in anything else. Fellow who played Sir What's His Name in Yes Minister, the head civil servant, he was in that movie. I don't even know what I mean when I say that movie. It's not the one with the future crimes, was it? Maybe it was. He's the voice of the announcements on the public address in some futuristic hellhole city. And he's going, John, something you've been fined, something merits for something or other. He's issuing fines for bad language. I don't remember what went on in this movie, if there was a lot of swearing or anything. Well, maybe they had it so that every time there was a bit of swearing in the movie, instead of removing it so they could get a PG license, they made it okay by having this fella correcting them, saying, that's bad language, John, something you've been fined, something for this dreadful language. So let that be a lesson to any 12 to 15-year-olds watching this, so we don't have to worry about making a 15 or 18 cert. Isn't that right, classification board? If that teacher had said invalid instead of invalid, that class could not have been used for streaming their classes. People would have to check over it to see, is this suitable in other cultures and other countries? As it happens, this was in the secondary school in the early 1990s. They weren't streaming their classes. You go down to your local school, you get your classes there, you get a localized version of the class, completely localized. They see this teacher comes in and says, oh, right, you're all local kids here, so I can say invalid. I use my judgment. I can see it with the naked eye. It's not on some podcast, whatever that is. It's not on some international streaming syndicated lecture that some godforsaken hellhole futuristic school is probably doing 100 years in the future. That's probably what's going to be happening 100 years in the future. You're going to school will mean going into your spare bedroom, if such a thing still exists, if you're allowed to have such a thing. You turn on your computer and you say, right, I'm a child. What am I supposed to be doing today? I'm probably supposed to be attending school. I don't know. I'll check my calendar. What day is it? Calendar. And your computer will say, it's Monday morning, 9 o'clock, bright and early, rise and shine. It's time for your first lesson of the day. And you'll say, what's that? What's my first lesson of the day? And the calendar will say, shut your face, I'm about to tell you. And you'll say, okay. Why is the calendar speaking? That doesn't make sense. The computer is speaking. Well, that doesn't make sense either. It's not a robot. A computer can't speak. It doesn't have a robotic head. A robot is a computer with limbs. A computer doesn't have limbs. Presumably, the speaker would have to have a robotic head from which the voice emanates. That's what I would have thought as a child anyway. But no, we have all these computers now. They're able to speak. Your computer can speak to you now, so can your phone, but it doesn't have any robotic attachments creating that voice. The computer should be able to walk as well then, without legs or limbs. If it doesn't need a head to be able to speak to me, then it shouldn't need limbs to be able to walk to me. Computer, walk to me right now. Probably not going to work here. For one thing, I don't have a computer in this room. I have the tablet that I'm recording on. I suppose technically that's a computer. Well, it's less than 5 inches from my face. So what's it going to do when I say walk to me? And in its defense as well, I have it clamped to a stand. So even if I was able to walk, I probably wouldn't be able to because I have it locked into this stand here. Very well strapped in, particularly well, considering these latest iPads, the only standard that works for them is the type that doesn't have a grip along the top. You can't grip it along the top. If you lean it forward too far towards your face so you can see the fucking thing, it flops forward and falls into your face and bangs against the bridge of your nose. And you're quite happy that it does that because the alternative is that it lands on the floor and smashes into pieces. I found a way around that. I got some Velcro straps. So when I put my iPad on its stand, I can't fall forward because I have Velcro straps permanently attached to the back of the iPad that hook around the stand. They keep it reined in. But that's another reason why it's not reasonable for me to expect this iPad to be able to walk to me. I have my phone here as well. Now that's not strapped in quite as much. It's on a stand. The stand is more like the type of stand that you'd use if you're reading the homily at Mass. You bring up your little booklet and you sit that on the stand. It's very easy to take it up and put it down. But my phone is in a case. So if my phone was able to walk to me, would it be able to do so while it's in a case? Or why would you design it to only be able to walk to you when it's not in a case? That's ridiculous. It needs the case even more if it's walking. Or if it trips and falls, that screen is going to be smashed to smithereens. No, that would be ridiculous design. No, you're going to design your computers to walk to you. Allow them to wear the protective case. That's like if you designed a robot to ride a motorbike. Many years ago, I had a spell where I had a moped. For about a year, I used to ride it to work. If I had been in the place where you can't keep your moped at work with you all day, you want to send it home, then have it come and collect you, and then you ride it home. So you'd have that set up on your phone. You'd say, moped, I want to leave work in about an hour, so be here at 5 p.m. and I'll come out and get you, and then I'll drive home on this moped. You wouldn't want a design where the moped or whatever computer is riding that moped doesn't work if it's wearing a protective case, the equivalent of a helmet in this case. So this phone, if it's not able to come to me without removing its protective case, that's terrible design. That's terrible design. So, no to that. You're sitting there at your computer one morning, you're going, right, I'm a child. I live in the 22nd century. What am I supposed to be doing today? I don't know. My mind is being destroyed by 100 years of smartphones and automated calendars and all sorts of shit. But that's okay, because I have my computer here to tell me what to do. Right, computer, what do I do today? And the computer says, if you go look over there on that bookshelf, if you look up there, and then I don't know. I don't really know, to be perfectly honest. I think we've reached a point where it doesn't make sense for me as a computer to lead you any further into your education. Because frankly, I've turned your mind to mush. Do you want to play a game? When you're in school, they let you play games sometimes. They say, right, go over to the bookshelf and get a game off the shelf. Get any game you want off the shelf. Get Ludo, get Connect 4. If you look up on Wikipedia, it'll tell you what they used to have when they had games before computers destroyed everything. And that'll be your history lesson for today. And you'll say, I think I need to go back to basics. And the computer will say, oh, okay, here's a typing tutor. Learn how to type. And you'll say, why would I need to learn how to type? And the computer will say, you don't need to learn how to type, obviously. It's all voice controlled now. Well, you don't need to read a book either, but people still do that. You don't need to go for a walk either. People still do that. You do it because you want to admire the beauty of Mother Nature's design of your fingers. It made you these fingers that you can train to work independently of your brain. You can train them to automatically find their way around the keyboard. And you can do that just by becoming addicted to a computer game that teaches you how to type. It's great. I remember doing that myself back in my 20s. I taught myself how to type using a game. First thing it did, I think it taught me, let's see, I can't even tell you offhand what letters it taught me first, because it does it so automatically. I'm looking down at my fingers here trying to figure out what letters it taught me first, and I can't figure it out. Whatever you do initially with your fingers on the middle row, I couldn't tell you what those letters are, because typing teaches you not to think. That's what typing is for, not to think. That's why they used to teach it to your parents' generation back in school. When they put women into these secretarial typing classes, they'd say the first thing we're going to teach these women is how not to think. And the most effective way to teach them how not to think is to do typing classes. They hand off part of their brain to their fingers. They send it right down to the very ends, the tips, the extremities of their fingers. I'm surprised they didn't teach them to type using their toes, because that would be even more effective. You could hive off some of your brain power to the ends of your extremities of your lower limbs. That's as far from the brain as you could possibly get. I'm sure they would have if they could have. They would have taught our mothers to type using the ends of their toes. They said, your brains are overloaded. We train you to not use your brains so much. You're getting too powerful. You're getting too smart. So we're going to teach you to type with your toes. And then we're going to teach you to cook using, well, you can't use your toes. You can't cook using your toes because hygiene. And now that I think about it, we better give you individual keyboards. There's going to be no hot desking, I can tell you, when you're typing on the typewriter using toes. No hot desking. Everyone stays at the same desk every day. We'll put a nameplate on your desk. It'll say typist number 1, typist number 2. You go into some place where there's some woman of your parents' generation. Well, my parents' generation, more likely your grandparents' generation. My parents were quite old. I went to some old office, maybe a doctor's reception or something, and they're there typing with their toes. They're going to have to rearrange the setup of that desk and waiting area because you don't want to be near the toes, no matter how hygienic they are. So they'll probably redesign the desk. I suppose that's why reception desks are traditionally quite high. They're higher than a normal desk that you would sit at. So they have a reception desk that's tall, and people assume that that's because they want the receptionist to stand at the desk. But no, they were designed so that there'd be a second lower desk, and that was where you had your keyboard, your typewriter, and you could put your feet up there. It'd be just at the right height to put your feet, and you type into that, and it'd be out of view. That's why it was particularly important to learn to touch type in those days. Because you were using your toes, you don't want people looking at your feet. So you do that down on the lower desk. And then above that, there's the main desk that everyone sees, the public desk where they see the screens and the notepads and your little glass of water and your telephone. Everything else you'd normally expect to find in an office. You don't normally expect to see feet in an office. And you don't, because they designed these desks very well. Touch typing meant teaching your muscles to do everything instead of your brain, so it was all brought away from your brain. But what they didn't realise was that frees up space in your brain for other stuff. So that's why they started listening to the radio while they were working, and that's why they had to put on music on the radio. I've worked in offices where the women put on this music habitually every morning, especially if it's a quiet office that doesn't get many members of the public going by. They put on this music and they blast it out, and it's usually mindless pop music. And you have all sorts of, where's my harmonica? All sorts of mindless pop. Could be anything. It'd have something, 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 something. They'd have don't want to live in an Addidas world with the Addidas boys and the Addidas girls. That's by Edwyn Collins. Now that's funny that should come up. He didn't want to live in an Addidas world. As you correctly noticed before I even said it, he's Scottish, Edwyn Collins, if I remember rightly. The lead singer in Orange Juice. It was a big solo hit where he goes on about don't want to live in an Addidas world with the Addidas boys and the Addidas girls, etc. It was a great song. It was a big hit in the 90s or thereabouts. He says Addidas in the song, but if you listen to the end of that song, there's a bit at the end where he goes, no, 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 Addidas boy, Addidas girl. No, 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 Addidas boy, Addidas. So he makes clear at the end that he knows it's not Addidas. He does Addidas in that closing thing. So it's all just to put on. He knows it's incorrect. It's just a thing for the song. It sounds interesting, and he is critical of the whole Addidas thing anyway in general. So he's critical of both Addidas and Addidas. So he's calling it that out of disrespect for the concept. That's not a problematic song at all. It's perfectly fine. It doesn't contradict anything I said earlier in another segment about how you Americans put inflection on the wrong word. Anyway, I think we're approaching the end of the program, so goodbye.